Hey, good evening, everyone, wherever you may be coming from. This is Dre, Recovery One Drones, and here we are on the last Sunday of the month of April. This month is flying by very quickly, and before you know it, it'll be done. So, talk about a few things as always. Hope you guys stick around, ask a few questions. I know some folks were a little perplexed by the graphic and the title of my show, but let me introduce you to my buddy. Tonight we have Bobblehead Greg, Obi-Wan Greg here, and I won Bob last year at the Las Vegas drone meetup. And usually he sits on my center channel speaker just over my shoulder, and today is going to be my first guest on my show for 2026. And like I said, what I titled for the show is help us, Obi-Wan Greg, can you lead us to the promised land? And a lot of actual, I would say, sense or thought process put behind that. We need someone like a Greg, like a Vic Moss, like a Ryan. We need people to continue to advocate on our behalf, to at least speak when given the opportunity to speak. Somebody said a lot of static. Okay, I looked up for that. Let me see, a lot of static. Okay, let's see where we're at. Static here. Because it shouldn't be any static at all. Let me pull this one. How's that? That much better? Like I said, if I had this thing running through the computer, it causes a lot of feedback. I don't know if it's because of the amount of hard drives I have run through my system. I have over 40 plus terabyte of external drives, which causes feedback in the system or can cause feedback. So hopefully that better. Good. So let me kind of circle around the block again, and we'll start all over. I don't know if you guys got the point. You can see the top of Greg's head here and the thing. I won Bob last year at the Las Vegas drone meetup, and he is my first official guest on my show. And Howdy doing there, Herman? Thanks for coming in. So, as I always tease Greg, and I tease his other crewmates there over at Pilot Institute, but I like giving Greg a hard time. He's a great person overall. Let me go ahead and see if we can get us both in the camera a little bit there. Let me lower that and see if I can pop Greg up a little higher. I think we could probably do that a lot easier. So we give Greg a prominent position here. There we go. I probably end up knocking him over, so no big deal. So, as I say, in people like Greg, people like Vic Moss, people like Ryan Lafayette, now we said no sound. Somebody says we have sound. So where are we at, folks? With sound or no sound? But I need to find out. We should have sound, and I don't understand it why we have no sound. And now I have to play with the plug and see where we're at on this. Let me see. Okay. Turn up the mic. I can hear you. Sound good here. It's low. Audio good. So I guess it depends upon what device you may be listening on is how good I'm getting. Now I just plugged in a plug now, which puts it back through the computer, which I'm trying to avoid all the static from the hard drives that I have. So give me a thumbs up. The sound's okay. East Coast gave me thumbs up before. Not sure. And it could be the fact I guess got to talk directly into the mic to make sure I'm not fading off to any direction or whatever the case may be. Okay, so give me a thumbs up. I know there's a delay between when I talk and I see things in the chat. There's about a 15-second, 20-second delay. So I'm sitting here looking, babbling off at the mouth. Thank you, East Coast, because I know his ears are very sensitive uh, about stuff that he hears. Yeah, that mic, like I say, it is very directional. So yeah, sometimes I have to talk directly into it. Is the main thing. Yeah, it is too easy for it to drop the volume real quick. Okay, as I was saying once again, uh, my Greg bobblehead I picked up at the Vegas meetup last year. Good evening, Lawrence. Glad you can make it in, partner. Appreciate it. And he is my first official guest on my show. I plan on having more as this year progresses, but I know everybody's got things going on, so sometimes it's hard to get scheduling in place. But I'll work on it a lot more since I only do a once a month show. So that gives me a whole month of trying to get things together with people, and hopefully all this networking and stuff will actually pop fizzle and shine the evening that we do it. I know some of the guys who do it every week still struggle and everything. So just imagine someone like me who only does it once a month. And like I say, I have to actually boot up my system that I stream with the day before, because a lot of times I get new updates, and then I got to figure out, did the update change all of my settings from the last month? So I have to go through and redo everything to make sure, hopefully, nothing's gone awry. But I was saying at the very beginning that I know some folks were perplexed by the picture and the wording behind along with the picture about what I was insinuating. Was I throwing Greg under the bus or putting him on the grill? No such action or intent behind that. I just know Greg is one of the leading providers of information in the drone community. And throughout history, in real history, if it be biblical history, and for us, we deal in drones and drone history. Greg has been a great advocate. He's been a great person of information for us to go to, and it's reliable information and honest information, which is what we need. If you have not known or been paying attention, which has been very hard to do, uh, those of us who have been involved at certain levels or at least been in the know understand that where we at today, this didn't show up yesterday. We have been having these thoughts, we have been having these conversations for at least the last 5 years when it started off with remote ID. Now, I've been around about 8 years commercially flying, and that's all I've ever been as a commercial flyer. I was not a hobbyist first, just a commercial flyer. I got into drones basically because of the work I did for the city I work for. So it's always been a commercial thing for me. But then again, Part 107 was about to be, the main thing back then. And then, like I say, 3 years ago now, remote ID was the next chapter. And now because political wins and other things, now we're seeing some of the top brands and the top brand being excluded if you live here in America. So I'm not telling you anything new if you've been in the know, and those of you who have not, and I have to direct this towards our FPV cousins, is that who felt they were not going to be um, impacted by all this legislation and stuff. Uh, they have gotten a rude awakening to that no one has been missed. And when I say no one, RC planes, FPV, regular camera drones, everything else has been impacted either through supply line chains being interrupted to this additional legislation, even down to the local level where you may live. And FAA is not coming to our rescue uh, anytime soon. So that is where we're at right now, and the reality of it. Myself, also on the flip side of all the negative that's been happening, we also got to be mindful that everything that has been happening is not truly keeping us out of the sky. I think the rumor mill is keeping us out of the sky more than anything else. I have continued to work on a lot of projects. Many of the East Coast. I'll jump on that. Yeah, like I was about to say, I have continued to work. I have continued to get requests for work, and the number one drone authorized for those requests for work still are DJI equipped drones. Now, I'll be first to say I have not done a federal job in years, or even a state job, which can require you to have a NDAA compliant drone. But most of the work I do is usually Fortune 500 companies or less. One of the big things I'm doing now, I'm getting a lot of requests for Amazon, not Amazon, but for Walmart facilities. So that includes the actual Walmart stores, Sam Clubs, and also the warehousing. So we all know Walmart, pretty powerful company, has a lot of influence in the government sphere. And like I say, I have a authorization letter that started off from September of 2025 and goes until September of 2026 for all Walmart facilities. So I don't have to go back and get a letter or authorization for every job. I have it for an entire year. So, like I said, I believe there's been more talk, more rumor mill, or what we call scuttlebutt within the community, scaring each other with every different release that comes out from the FAA or from the FCC and whoever else about who, what, when, and where, when actually nothing has really changed that much for those of us who do commercial flying. Now, the burden has really been placed on the hobbyist community. And I told them several years ago, those who were listening, I said, and it's like it goes back to, there was not a sufficient voice to speak on behalf of the hobbyist community. The AMA laid down and played dead, which they were never a real friend of ours in the first place, and thought they could try to broker a deal for them for their people on their own. Well, that didn't work out so well for them. So, like I said, we all have to keep moving forward and be mindful that if we do things at the best of our ability, it will contribute and help us in the long run. And hopefully, some of these restrictions and some of these attitudes will continue to erode or roll back to allow us to fly as we once did before. But like I always tell everybody, you can't worry about the past. You got to keep moving forward and keep pushing, and going from there. Interesting things. Dusty reminded me about the stolen drones from the military base. Just goes to show you the great need, and there's not too many, I would say, manufacturers of agricultural drones, and especially not with the accessories that you can use with the DJI ones. And those were the ones that were stolen. It was DJI stealing the agricultural drone, stealing from a military facility. Which once again makes it kind of odd that, they're getting all excited about not wanting small drones to fly anywhere. But here they are, the agricultural drones usually start off around $20,000 to $30,000 and going up. I'm not sure of the model that was taken, but I know of anything from a T100 and going up. You're starting at the low end of a $20,000 drone to a high end to almost $100,000 drone based upon its capabilities. I've been mentioning a few videos I've done of late that I am moving up in my inventory. Like I said, I buy what I can afford to buy and use it to the best of its ability. And all the products that I did put together here will be here by the end of the month. So I'll do I hate to use the term unboxing, but I'll do a reveal. How about that? I'll do a reveal of my next level drone that I have coming, like I said, by the end of the week. And I put myself on a budget and says, okay, if I got to buy this part from here, buy that part from there, buy that from there, somewhere else, that's just the way I had to do it. And yes, Dusty, you're right. This was something that was not something simple that you can just pick up in one hand. Those drones are definitely, even from the smallest ones, they are a two-man operation. From carrying it, setting it up, everything. It is basically, unless you got a winch, they are always a two-man operation to operate. So it's one of those things that when you have situations like this, it's usually for the purpose of supplying someone else with something. Individuals who probably stole it had knowledge of what it was, where it was at. They put together a plan to obtain these, and they probably got a customer to sell it to already. Because these are the type of drones you're just not going to be able to drop them off at the local pawn shop, and they wouldn't even know what they got. Wouldn't have a clue. Because most people, unless you work in that industry, that is something you wouldn't have no knowledge of. And let's take a quick break. First one here, and this one will be from Air Data.
Data. When your flight data matters.
All right. Air Data. Like I said, you guys know I'm a big Air Data fan. It has saved my butt in the past. But that gives us a chance to break off another direction Because as always, regardless of what the going on politically and everything else, I'm getting the same questions as always from people I see in Facebook groups and everything else, asking the same question: What's the best drone for this? What's the best drone for that? And I try to remind people, you got to look at your area, okay? Know what is going on where you live at in your state, or maybe a couple states. If you're in a small state and you can be in two or three different states within about 2 or 3 hours, I call that's referred to talking about regional areas. Okay, you need to find out what is happening in your area of operation. That should be the first factor in knowing what drone that you may need to acquire. I know it's an easy choice to go out and grab a Mini 4 Pro or the Mini 5 Pro and everything else because of the cost factor. But if you're in an area, and people always bring this up, people say, well, I'm going to get into real estate. I said, well, what real estate are you getting into? Are you getting into residential real estate? Are you getting into commercial real estate? Those are just two of the main areas right there. If you're in residential real estate, you have to think about that is where a lot of people try to go to first. Excuse me. And I always tell people you will need at least 6 to 8 realtors to feed you enough listings for it to be viable for you to really be operating in that sector. So you got to ask yourself, do I have 6 to 8 realtors to keep feeding me listings? That because I always look at each realtor and it's a numbers game. By average, an average realtor may get 3 listings a month. Okay, so if you got 6 to 8 realtors, that means you're going to have anywhere from 18. If you got 8, you're going to be somewhere around 24 listings a month that you're going to need to go do video work on. And that's every month. So you got to think, you need repeat business every month to operate a business. Now, commercial realtor, like I said before, commercial wise, it might be a little more in the pay, but then again, you're not going to get that kind of level of work that you may get from residential. And just like Lawrence said here in the chat, that's why I said it's got to be month in, month out. 1 month doesn't dictate a whole year. And that's why I tell folks, I like being on contract work. Give me a job site that starts from the dirt up and finish houses on the end. Those are 6 months to over a year normally jobs. It is easier to run a business when you have repetitive work every month in, month out. You can, sit down and count numbers, add up numbers and say, okay, I got 4 or 5 locations I got to do every month for the next 6, 7 months. So, and I'm getting paid $200 each job. So that way you can figure out, this is what I can do. I can actually even go buy another drone to up my capabilities to other clients, everything else, or add to what I have, like buy, if your drone is RTK capable, maybe you go out and buy a GNSS system. So you can, once again, it improves what you can do, and the cost factor, the work you can do can go up. So this is why I try to explain to people. I said, there are a lot of things in the drone community that needs a lot of attention. And that's why I'm saying about, you need to look at what's in your area. And that's why my previous position as a construction inspector gave me an insight of that. I live in Southern California, and we have been on a I guess you want to call it a building spike, or we call it just a lot of building going on since 2010. And into 2014, it was starting to fall off. So you're talking about almost 15 years of solid work, a lot of big projects, a lot of housing development, not one house. We're talking about several hundred houses being built. And when I say that, here in Southern California or California in general, right around 20, I want to say 18 or 19, the state mandated that any developer who was building more than, I want to say, is it more than 50 homes, they have to put solar on houses any number above that 50. And if they offer it, they got to offer it to everybody who's buying a home. So with that in mind, just like anything else, I remember way back when I was a police officer, and it finally took the state to hear what law enforcement groups were saying about DUI drivers and so forth, and how we wanted to suspend their license and make it mandated that we tow the vehicle in, and they couldn't retrieve it for nothing less than 30 days and stuff. So what happened was, with those new laws that came into play, new towing businesses popping up because they knew the money was in the 30-day hold period. And if you failed to come pick your vehicle up and pay that $1,000 to $2,000 holding fee, they had the rights to sell your vehicle at auction. So they had the right to recuperate their money. So a lot of people lost vehicles. The car wasn't worth much. They let it sit there and it be sold, and going from there. But when they tried to reverse that law, or what cities did, when I worked for the city of Long Beach, we had our own. We developed our own tow yards, and like I said, a lot of people got upset. Tow companies got upset, saying we were cutting them out. But the same thing, the law was not intended for private entities to only be involved in the towing, storage, or even the sale of vehicles that was produced, because it was always the police officers, law enforcement, who were having these vehicles towed in based upon their interaction with these individuals. The tow companies were not doing any of the, as we say, legwork. So that's always been a brouhaha in a lot of cities in California on that ruling that started back in the late 80s, early 90s when I was a police officer. So same thing with, going towards drones and everything is like with us. We got realtors, in-house companies, as far as construction companies, doing the drone work, trying to cut us out. Okay, they're telling one of their realtors go get the Part 107, or they don't even bother with that. With a lot of realtor companies, or at least the construction companies are trying to do it the right way. But like I say, in the long run, it's a side thing for their employee. It's not a full time thing like it is for some of us, or at least a lot of us. Even we do it part time, like myself. It hey TJ, it is simply we involve ourselves more in detail on what's required, how to get better, how to produce better stuff. The other person says, "Well, hey, I'm a engineer assistant. That's what I'm striving for. This drone stuff is just, keeping the company's bottom line to where it is." So they have no real interest in trying to get better at what they do. So that's why I say, we need to be at the best that we are. So it makes a difference up when you're out there to do good work at all times. Because as I saw here in the chat talking about the best compliment your business can get is a returning customer, that is true, because that customer begins to rely upon you to get things done. And the same thing even with the brokers. A lot of guys start off with ZetView and a couple other small names that pay small money. And you'll notice as you continue to be more consistent, with your outcomes, your deliverables, they will start to send you on better projects, bigger projects, because you become more reliable. And that's the key thing in this business. It's any business. When you produce good results on a consistent basis and you become reliable, your name gets out there. So anything that comes up in your area, people are like, well, who's the guy that worked on so-and-so's project? I want them. And in construction, I don't care if it's from the East Coast or West Coast, that is how construction works. They like working with the people they have worked with before because they know what kind of work they will produce. So like I say, when you get an opportunity, you get, no matter what it is, sometimes you got to treat it like it's a gold mine, you know, because that job you do or doing could be the key to what you get on the next job and stuff. And I've had some brokers that started me off, like I say, I tell like fly guys. I got fly guys on a whim. They had a guy who was flying Home Depots, and he walked on them. They called me up coming from a job, doing another job somewhere else, and asked me, you know, can you complete these jobs? I said, yeah, I can get it done. And they said, well, we need them done in 72 hours. 14 Home Depots. I had to do panorama shots on 14 Home Depots in my area in 72 hours. I wasn't about to sit and tell them, no, I can't handle it. That might be a little much. I was like, man, this is my big opportunity. This is like 5-6 years ago. Biggest job I've gotten to date. And I was not about to let myself squander it because of the time constraints. I just say, hey, that Saturday I went out, I knocked out 8 of them. Boom. That Sunday I went out, I knocked out another 6 of them. Boom. Got it all done. They wanted me to use drone deploy. Took all the shots, uploaded to them. Boom. Like I said, I've been doing jobs for fly guys for over 5 years. And I can say some have been some nice jobs. This year so far, I don't know what is happening. I know they had a revamping internally, but the payout has not been what it used to be. You know, and I've flown for another broker company called Trace Air. They're in line with Lanier Housing Development. Those were great jobs. Lasting, the biggest job I had with them, I had for 4 years. Other jobs may last a year. Shortest job I ever had for them was 6 months. So on average, I was doing between Trace Air work and fly guys work, I was doing around 10 jobs a month. Okay, flying on weekends. Usually I can say 10 jobs, I'm working 6 to 8 days a month. And I was bringing in decent money. And I knew that was good money because last year when the building, boom, flattened out, I made less than 2/3 what I did in 2024. So like I said, it's drone work, especially if you're doing stuff in the construction side of the house. It is very much market dependent. So that's why I say you got to look at your market. Now, like I say, me doing solar on top of what everything I do, solar work is good work across the Southwest, from Texas all the way to California. You can get a lot of solar work because there are a lot of solar jobs, solar panels on warehouses, solar panels on regular houses, solar farms, everything else to try to, balance out the electricity costs that we get, especially in California. So that's always a good thing. I call that extra side gravy work and stuff. They still make good payouts for the work you do. But like I said, you got to have a certain drone. You got to have a thermal drone. And there ain't no mini thermal drone. And usually for a thermal drone, the cheapest you're going to start off with is usually around the $3,000 mark for a mostly recent drone and going forward. Unless you can pick up a used one. Like I said, I bought my first thermal drone back in 2021 because I knew the law had changed. And it's been waiting for it because not so much I looking at we call pre-built solar situations, you'll get a lot of post work, more post work that people need to find out if their system is still working as it did when they first got it on the house or the warehouse or whatever and stuff. And there's different layers of that. The ones on the houses require you to take pictures of the utility box on the house, the breaker box per se, and things of that nature. So someone like I know Herman was in here. He's an electrician by trade also. That would be nothing for him. He knows everything goes on. Pop open that box, take a couple of pictures with a phone or whatever cheap camera, and then fly the roof. That's it. You're in and out, probably 20 minutes tops. You can do like 3 or 4 of those in a day, and there are companies that do that. If you can get enough work in your area, and you're doing like 3 or 4 of those a day, you can make decent money. I can tell anybody, you're not gonna get rich. And because of my city position, I can sit here and claim to be a 6-figure drone pilot, but I know I do more other things than fly a drone for my city. So I can say, those who are making that kind of money is like any type of job. You got to put the time in. It's not because they're paying you this tremendous amount of money. And a lot of folks saying they have left the industry and everything else and moved on or think the industry has gotten oversaturated. I said, work is work. The more you put in, hopefully the more you get out. Now the difference is who you're working for. Are you working for yourself or are you working for somebody else? And even though if you're doing broker work, like I can tell people, I'm a 1099 pilot, which means I do a lot of broker work. Well, how that works out, I don't have to make any cold calls. I don't have to send out any flyers. That's their part of the deal. I go out there and supply the product. That's my part of the deal. And with that being said, putting it like that, that means I'm still the pilot in command. I choose the date and times. I'm watching the weather. Like I was supposed to fly this weekend, we got rain, a little bit of rain. I'm not going to risk putting my drones out there in the rain because the drones I do that has an IPF rating, those drones are not the ones I'll be using. So that means can't use that drone. You got to use that other one that doesn't have an IPF rating. So I do not want to risk. I don't care how light the rain is because like I say, rain builds up. It's not just that one time that you take off. It's out there flying for about 20 minutes doing a grid pattern, mapping out a Walmart facility, and all of a sudden it gets a little wonky, and all of a sudden it wants to take off another direction. And all it is me not paying attention to what I should be paying attention. That's the difference between us being well-trained pilots compared to the guy who works within their company who doesn't really care about what he's doing because that's not what he was hired for. It's just a side job for him. So that's why I say, what we do is a choice. What we do is essential in a lot of markets because it's more safely. I think I mentioned this before. I did a project in Riverside, California, where a individual had fallen through a roof. I think it was after one of the heavy rainstorm winters we had. Somebody was on the roof, fell through it. So then they hired me to fly 17 buildings on their facility, thermal look at to make sure each building's roof was safe enough to put somebody on it. So there might be a lot of things. That's why I tell folks when somebody shows you a picture of something or whatever, if you see something that's wrong, ask a question. Don't be quick to point a finger to say, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have done this. I say, won't you ask the question of why they flew the drone, why they chose that color palette for that flight during whatever time of day it did. I know some guys are still doing flights at night because that was the old adage of doing roof inspections was to do it at night. Well, that's great if you're looking for AC leaks or heat leaks because it's easy to see at night. But if you're looking at the condition of a roof, you might want to see it in the daytime and see how the sun is reflecting or absorbing into the roof material, something you can't see at night. So there's always several reasons why a flight may take place at a certain time of day and for a certain reason. So there's always time, I'm sure you guys have seen like I have. Somebody posts a picture, and the problem is they didn't put out enough information for whatever they're showing us, and then everybody starts having their own little, point the finger conversation. And I just sit back, and if I do get involved, the first thing I ask, I said, what was the who, what, where, and why this flight was conducted? Because I can't help you if I don't know what we're trying to achieve. And that's why I tell guys who talk about, well, I want to go get a thermal drone so I can get more work. And I said, well, why don't you find out if you can get at least a Cat 1 certification? And I tell you right now, the course I went through didn't really mention nothing about drones, but it taught me information about what's it called, thermography. Okay, it let me know what was the purpose of thermal work. How do I use it? What am I looking for? All these different things. Like we always say, the camera is just on a different platform, and the same thing with thermal work. It's just on a different platform. The concept of the work is the same as it's always been. It's just on something that flies in the sky and gives you a different perspective on what you may be needing to look for and going on from there. So let me go ahead and take another break here. And we got here, I think we got something from our boys at Pilot Institute, if I got the right one. Let me see.
To be the best, you have to train with the best. Pilot Institute.
All right, yeah, that was the Pilot Institute, gang. And I don't know if you guys have noticed or not, these are the little things I notice as I scroll through Facebook and different other platforms is the number of school offerings. There's quite a few of them out there besides Pilot Institute that wants to sell you Part 107, classes. Some of them want to sell you drone business classes. And for me, I came up the hard way. I bought the books off Amazon, studied for 2 weeks, took the test, passed it. Now I'm sure if I would have took the class from Pilot Institute back in when I passed it, late 2018, something like that, I might have had an easier time because I am a visual learner. So that's what made it a little more tougher for me because I had to sit down and read them books. So that made it a little tough, and I had to read the book. Ain't that right, Greg? I had to read the book, and and went down there and put my 150 like it was back then and passed the test. I was sweating bullets, big time, because you don't know what you know until you get tested on it. That's for sure. But like I always say, I'm a believer in training. I'm a believer in certifications. No matter what you do, what you've done in life, we all know it as that the more training, the more certifications you get, makes people that you work with more comfortable. Okay, when you can tell somebody you have done whatever you've been like Dusty, he works with concrete. Okay, I'm sure there's a local union down there that offers courses every once in a while for the newbies, new guys that offer courses on framing, offer courses on everything to do with concrete and stuff like that. So you just don't get a greenhorn come up on the job, don't know nothing and everything else. And it's basically everybody's got to show them everything from how to walk in the mud, how to board the mud, and how to use the finishing tools on the mud, and all that kind of stuff. You know, it's just a matter of training. You know, some folks go that way, but like I said, it's a lot easier. You got somebody who at least knows the basics, so they're at least adding to the project and not slowing the project down. And the same thing with drones. If you at least take a couple courses here and there, like I say, I'm here. I know the Vegas is one of the biggest things that we kept trying to put together is have courses offered at each one of the events. And last year, I went to the mapping coursing. Even though I do a lot of mapping, uh, and that was basically based on my experience of working in a construction industry. But I really appreciated the class I sat in, uh, all the things that I didn't know that I should know, and I'm glad I do know. And now I can show somebody, yeah, I'm up to speed, fully up to speed, and going back hopefully next year, I'll take another class that they may be offering on whatever it may be on, and going from there. So based upon what you're doing, what your interest is with your drone, try to. I don't care if it's just a local photography group. Join up, learn about the different steps and filters, and learn about different speeds and everything else. All that little stuff makes you a better photographer. Like I said, the camera on the drone is just it. It's a different vehicle, different tool that camera sits on. You knowing how to set the settings of that camera, knowing what it's capable of doing, makes the difference from probably what I would produce and what you could probably produce after going through a class. You know, I'm an inspector at heart. That's what I look for. I'm a we call a CISIC, which is like I say, that's my inspection certification. I'm a QSP here in California, which is Qualified SWIP Practitioner and everything, which basically means I have the authority to inspect any job site for violations of the construction permit. So if you got crap laying around the ground, you got retention basins are not properly set up and everything else. You're tracking stuff off site, all these different things. That's the stuff I know to look for day in, day out. So I can go in there and make a foreman's day the worst day in his life because now I don't slapped with a bunch of violations and probably would tell everybody to go home if there's serious violations. So that's what I'm saying. Use what you do, use what you know, and just try to get better at it. That's the whole thing about using drones. Is just try to get better at it. Try to get better at flying. Every time I fly, I try to get better. Try to be smoother on the sticks. Try to get that angle. I don't need to buy every drone that comes out just to get a one angle shot. Try to use the drones that I have to get that shot. And that's all it takes, a little more practice 9 times out of 10, and we can get the most out of what you got and produce something that's just as valuable instead of buying a one-trick pony and going from there. East Coast says that you are the guys we don't want to see. That's right. I used to tell all of my my foremen on jobs that we would have a pre-job meeting, okay? And I would tell them, I said, if you don't see me, that's a good thing. That means you're doing it right. When you see me pull up to your job site, that's when we got problems. Not that I don't drive by your site, is that all I need to do is drive by it and I can see you doing everything right. When I got to stop and pull up and let you know a few things here and there, that's not a good day. It's like my days when I was a cop. If I take the time to stop you, I'm going to take the time to scratch you out a ticket. I'm not going to waste my time giving out warnings. So that's the big thing. Well, like I say, folks, I appreciate those who have hung on with me here for this almost an hour. Yeah, we're getting up on an hour here. And like I say, let's support one another as best we can. Try to help each other in the Facebook groups as best we can. And even those who are doing the posting, the OPs, put as much information out there so we can actually help you. When you put out, a few words and then you expect nobody knows what who, what, where, and why, and then you get people going back and forth at each other and you kind of find out it had nothing to do with what they're arguing about. Is it because the original OP never put out, the parameters of what the flight was about? Because we know how we are. We all gonna be drone police. We all gonna be the best photographer. You know, like I say, most of us are nowhere near Alex's level or Jeff Norman's level when it comes to photography, but we want to act like it on Facebook and stuff, and just like flying and getting pictures like a Mark Fisher and stuff like that. Mark Fisher was taking pictures of wildlife before he even flew a drone. All he doing is using another tool to get it done. So shout out to everyone out there. Like I say, even though you may not see me in the chats, I'm always lurking. I'm always lurking, seeing what's going on. I just don't feel the need that I need to be vocal in the chats all the time, but I am listening to hear what's going on. So I will talk to you guys, if not sooner, because I got some equipment coming in. I'll do a reveal video for it. And other than that, I will see you on the last Sunday of next month, and that will be the last call of the month. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.